Autumn, on all things essentially that runner kind of like the main things runners are missing in their programming. And let me make you the host, Autumn,
Okay.
so that you can share your screen and add people as they join. Okay. Okay, that should have worked.
Okay, let me just pull up my screen share options. Host only, all participants. Host only. Isn't it funny how we do this a million times, but yet
Great time. Like, how do we share the
We
screen?
never get better.
oh. Sorry guys, I just want to share a portion so I can pull up that email. How is that? Not so good, is it?
No.
There,
You
Is
should
that-
be able to click on just
There you
your
go.
there, that's
Good.
great.
Oh, that's good.
Is that good?
Yep.
Nailed
Okay.
it.
Is that okay?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay. Okay, you guys, I'm super excited to chat about this today. Couple of reasons. One, this is one of my favorite things to do is running. And the second favorite thing to do of mine is weightlifting. So I've spent a lot of time trying to balance the two. And I think here at HF, we have a lot of clients as well that love to run. They love to lift weights, but they also like to dive into that space as well. I personally have a lot of clients that transition this time of year from a lot more heavy weightlifting, kind of diving into a little bit more space to run. So I was really excited to kind of get going with this. Running season is here, right? I'm sure coaches, you guys all have people who are like, I want to try to get in, a 5K. I want to try to get in a half marathon this year, or it's getting nice outside and I feel like I just want to run more. But we also have, a lot of clients who come and say, I'm not going to lift weights this year. I'm just going to focus more on running. So I wanted to put some information out there so you guys can have it and circle back to it just to know that keeping your weight training in your program and keeping a really good balance with it will really help, one, with your running tremendously, bigger, faster, stronger. And two, definitely with injury prevention and recovery as well. So it's really good to, and I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, but think this throughout this call. It's really good as a runner to have like a long-term plan, right? Because it's a little bit more volume in your training as well. So what I mean by a long-term plan is you're going to have seasons where you're in running maintenance and you're working on weight training more, right? And then when you're prepping more in season, you're going to move the needle a little bit, titrate running a little higher, move down the volume of weightlifting. And you can do that multiple ways, kind of switching days, going to full body. And we can get into that more as we continue with this discussion. But it's a really common thing to have this time of year. You guys want to get out and start running more. So don't skip strength training. I feel like, and I have a biased opinion, I feel like HF has such a good amount of weightlifting that you can choose from, and you can really mix and match, and you can really try to fit in what works for you with your schedule, what works for you with your running goals, whether that's a 5K, whether that's a half ultra, to get in and really still stick to the basics with your weightlifting. I see a lot of times trading weights for extra miles. And then we get to the point sometimes where we're finding ourselves with some injuries. We get to the end of running season where our knees are a little bit more achy, our hamstrings are a little bit more tighter, our lower back's a little bit more tighter, and really keeping a really well-balanced state with making sure you're still hinging, you're still leg pushing, you're still taking care of your quads, you're still taking care of your hamstrings with the strength training modality, maybe using a little bit more unilateral work as well to keep your body healthy will really help at the end of the running season to build back into, okay, now it's turning fall. Now I want to strength train a little bit. It's really going to help that transition a little bit better. So stronger, faster, and more resilient. That's what we want as a runner, right? We want to be stronger. I do as a runner. You can't be a stronger runner without having weights involved. I don't care if you're the fastest sprinter at the biggest college ever, or you're just a mom who's really wanting to get a really good trail run in at the end of the season. You've got to be stronger, faster, those fast twitch muscles. We really work with training those. And then just resiliency all around health and balance for sure. Why we need it. It boosts endurance. We talk a lot about in here kind of going in and out of zone 2 and glycolytic work. Boosting endurance with the strength training really works that glycolytic end efficiently, which means you really will be able to run longer without fatigue as quickly. So it's just making you a more efficient runner. Of course, prevents injuries, especially the older we get. I can tell you right now, if I don't keep X, Y, and Z in my weightlifting towards the end of my running season, I will feel it for sure, just with the age that I'm at. There's a lot of research towards this, that strength training can cut sports injuries in half. It's kind of like you look at, I don't know, kids, right? When they're playing sports, it's like play it all because it helps with injury prevention. Increases speed. I want to be faster. I definitely get competitive when I run. And I think a lot of times there's a big misconception that we got to pound the pavement and just keep the miles high in order for us to increase our speed. And really, we got to get stronger to increase our speed. Smarter training sessions, shorter and smarter. What I mean by that is incorporating a really good 30-minute strength training or a sprint session on the track versus 6 miles on the road. There's going to be a big difference with that, with it helping increase your speed. Posterior chain, right? We all want, you look at, this is the best example. You look at sprinters this last Olympics, right? And then you look at the long distance runners. They're designed for their body compositions for a reason. The long distance runners, they're really long, they're really lean. The sprinters, we got a really strong posterior chain, glutes, hamstrings, their lower back. They need a lot of power. They're very, very fast. And I'll probably tell you right now, the sprinters are going to be a lot more resilient than the long distance runners that were just itty bitty. Not that that's not a great thing, because we definitely have to take that direction. That's an extreme case, but definitely we want some strong glutes. We want some strong hamstrings. That's really going to help push us faster.
And I will say, Autumn, I think a
Yeah.
lot of women I know that want to, that want to have a faster marathon time or want to, run like a faster triathlon race, and just talking to them and seeing how they train. I think a lot of women feel like, oh, if I lift, then I'm going to be sore, then my runs aren't going to be good. And they're just thinking such like short term and just really narrow focused instead of zooming out on the big picture of like, okay, yes, I'm going to have a harder time in the beginning as I'm working to get stronger, but then also still running. But over the course of the year, I'm going to be so much faster because I'm stronger. So it's like you kind of have to take one step back to take 3 steps forward. And instead of just continuously like adding more miles, adding more volume. And I've seen countless women that just neglect weight training that have so many injuries. Like that's where the injuries happen. More volume is not the answer.
No, especially when you're trying to interweave the two together. So that's why I'm saying it's really important to take a step back and look at your year. Like what season are you in? And if you guys, if you're strong in the weight room and you're feeling good, you're incorporating some zone 2, you're doing sprints, you can go out and run a really good 5K. I mean, now if you're pushing the time and you're setting goals that way, that's a different story. But there's an efficient way that you can find for yourself to interweave both, so it can help prevent, your injury, and you can get both of it in, because a lot of it's time too, right? Like I have a lot of friends who are like, I just don't have the time because I'm trying to swim, bike, and run. When do I fit that strength training in? And so there's a
Have to
really,
have an off season too. I
yeah,
think
you got to have an
like
off season. Yep.
that's where you have way more weightlifting, where during your training season, you're just maintaining ideally. You're trying not to
Yep.
lose muscle.
Yep. Because you're in training season. You're
Mhm.
you're there to maintain muscle mass and train running. When you're
Which,
not training,
not to interrupt, I feel like
yeah,
the issue is that women want to keep their training volume the same all year. So
mhm,
yeah, you don't have the time to add lifting on top of a full training schedule of running volume maintaining in your off season. So in your off season, your running volume does need to decrease and your intensity does need to decrease so you can get stronger. So
right.
yeah.
And there's a lot of females, and I get this, we want to hold on to our body composition. Well, I want to maintain my muscle mass and hold on to my body composition. How do I do that? You have seasons where you're working on body composition and you're maintaining running. And then you have a season when you're still maintaining strength. You want to stay strong, but you're working on your running. So it is a really hard thing to kind of find a balance for, but there's definitely some things that you can do to help keep it balanced. Um, Prioritize strength training around key runs. This is going to depend too, you guys, on your current goal. So what I mean by that is right now, if you're like, you know what, in June, I have a half marathon, that's your priority. You're doing more performance goals right now. So you want to prioritize your strength training around your running. Vice versa, when you want to prioritize your running around your strength training. So this can kind of flip flop depending on what season you're in. On hard run days, keep lifting light. Um, Skip it or try to separate it. Easy run days are ideal for strength training sessions. For long run days, I recommend skipping heavy lifting the day before and after to allow for recovery. This depends too, I think, on your fitness level as well and the distance that you're running. So, for example, I have a client who just came in. She is running a marathon not till September, but she really wants to work on some body composition goals. So I have a little bit more focus on strength training, and we're working more on her quality of running versus her quantity of running. So I have her on
Hey,
leg day.
Autumn.
Yeah.
Sorry. Can you let people in that are in the waiting room? I don't
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh.
I was
No, I won't. Oh, I got all my people here too. Did I do it? Are they all in?
um probably. I
Yeah.
don't.
Oh, I have 12.
We can't go.
I might just need to mute everyone.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mute all. Okay. There we go. Let me know if I need to do that again. Um, so we're doing sprints short. We got 45-minute time frame. We're doing sprints one day. We've got a 45-minute time frame on her next running day. We're doing hill runs, and then we've got a long run. So we're just trying to make her runs just a little bit more efficient versus quantity. Like we don't need as much quantity of running right now. Now, when she gets closer to marathon time and we get out of this cycle, she'll need a little bit more flexibility with that. Like we'll have to have a little bit more distance under her feet. We'll still keep the sprints because that's more beneficial. And we'll lower the volume of her weight training, but then we'll kind of change when she's running. So it's kind of a hard thing to try to balance, but it's really good to think to myself, if I can get my run in at one time, this is what I think is easiest, and then try to fit in your weight training separately, that would be the most ideal. Or you can strength train first and then get your run in right after. To focus on basic lifting. This is going to be, yeah, key lifts. Sometimes we get really focused on a lot of gym fluff when really we just need some basic lifting. You're squatting, you're deadlifting, leg push, upper body pull, leg pull, upper body push. If you just keep it simple with your strength training, you can always get it balanced really well. So build your lower body power for stronger strides. Step ups and single or split squats. I love unilateral work for my runners. I feel like that takes out a lot of discrepancy that towards your hips and your lower back that running will give you. It improves balance. And single leg strength is always good. Core work is huge for runners. Okay. That's really going to be essential for posture and stability. Glute bridge, is huge as well. Hip thrusters really isolate your quads. All of these lifts are so key in HF too. So I feel like you have such a good program to reach out to. And if you're limited on time, do the core lifts. Don't feel like you have to do the rest of it. Just choose the core lifts, stick to that, and then get to your run. Of course, that depends on time as well. So keep strength, work short and focused. You don't have, when you're in maintenance for strength training, you don't have to lift that much, you guys. You just need to keep it maintained within about 30 minutes. 2 to 3 times per week is fine, plenty. And then you can balance your running in. Like I said, prioritize those compound movements for efficiency. So get in and squat. If all else fails, my husband always tells me, if all else fails, squat. Get in, put the bar on your back and squat because it's such a powerful lift. You're working core to extremity, and then you can go and get your run in, your efficient run, if you need to fit that in for time purposes. So you can pick up your sprints or your hill runs. And then, of course, like we've talked about this whole time, adjust strength work based on your race goals. So what are your goals? When are they at? Base phase, high mileage, lower intensity, lift heavier at this time and build strength. This is where you can work on body composition. This is the season to do that in. Peak race training, you know, higher intensity run, lower mileage, reduce your weights, focus on maintenance, focus on those core lifts, lighter loads, higher reps, depending on the run. I kind of more of a fan of lower weights, higher weights, lower reps, but that just depends on where you're at with your race day. And then tapering phase, 1 to 3 weeks pre-race, minimize lifting intensity. So just start tapering off. I mean, going into your race day, you'll have to watch your recovery. You'll have to watch your volume with your strength training. And that's important too when you're working with a coach, because they can kind of have that guidance with you in that direction. Recover like an athlete. Sleep is crazy important when you're doing both. I know we all know sleep is important, but it's just even more important when you're doing both, when you're prioritizing racing and getting strength training in. It's basically performance, right? You're training to perform. Nutrition, obviously, mobility to support muscle recovery. I definitely feel like with mobility and muscle recovery, something is always better than nothing. So I tell my clients 2 minutes. If you're running, I want 2 minutes of foam rolling. Foam roll your quads, foam roll your glutes, foam roll your hamstrings, because really all it will take is 2 minutes to keep you healthy. 2 minutes of stretching. So make that a priority, because that will really help with that injury prevention as well. Saunas are huge. Cold plunge are huge. Cold plunge for recovery. So about that 50 degrees temp. And then also the foam rolling, and that's just going to help with soreness to roll into your next training session as well. So yeah, just down here, strength training, it doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be one or the other. Super important to keep that in mind, because you can definitely balance that out. It just kind of takes patience to figure out what works and what doesn't. And you're also not only balancing out that, you're balancing out life. So you have to kind of find some space to give it more bang for your buck. But definitely stay on top of your strength training, you guys. Keep it simple. 2 to 3 short sessions leading into running season a week. Keep it about half hour. Give yourself a really good endurance run. Give yourself a really good power run, like hills. Get on the hills. Give yourself a really good long distance run. Those are best done on the weekend as well. Fit those in. But just don't ditch the weights and stay on top of your recovery. And then once that season's over, then reassess your goals. All right, I just went through run season. Most of the time, when you're done with your races, you're kind of sick of that anyways. You're ready to kind of shift gears mentally, change into something new. So then you can build a little bit more volume on towards your weight training, and then you can titrate down your running, get it a little bit more efficient, to help support more strength goals and body composition goals going into another season. And that's really kind of the best way to approach it. I definitely am a fan of running. And it's been awesome for me to do throughout my life, but I've really worked on making sure I can maintain a specific level of strength training because it's just that important for me personally. So, oh, I don't know why it just switched you as host. Did I do that or did you do that?
Sorry, I was muted. You can keep talking. I did it just
Okay.
to let people in case they were in the waiting room.
Okay. There's a chat here. Let people in the waiting.
Yeah, does anyone have any questions on running and lifting for Autumn? Autumn has ran. So what are some of like the kind of best races you've ran? Because you have done so many.
So I do a lot of halves. I do a lot of trail halves. I haven't done a full trail marathon in years, but I did the half ultra years ago in Bryce Canyon. That was
For
super.
people that don't know, how many miles is that?
That was 48 miles in Bryce. And it was really, really fun, but I got done and I was like, yeah, I'm going to do another one. And then I just haven't signed up to do another one again. I keep working on different levels of fitness, but I love the shorter distance trail. I'm a big trail runner.
By
I love
shorter, you mean like 15 miles? Like what are
Yeah,
we?
like 13, like the halves. I love
Yeah,
the
yeah.
halves. Yeah, they're just funner for me to stay balanced with. I feel like anytime you do more of the ultras, that has to be a little bit more extreme. And fitting that into life makes it really hard. I mean, you're waking up at 3 o'clock to run before a football game, right? So you kind of have to balance it. I do have ultras or clients that are doing ultras and they amaze me with their work ethic and how they're able to balance everything. So it is an extreme and I just haven't been able to mentally push myself back into that zone. So
Just huge
anyways,
time commitment
yeah.
and mental load, obviously, because I think one thing that people don't realize when they decide they want to race and do well at running is if you're training like an athlete, which if you have performance goals, you're training like an athlete. And then you need to, like you talked about, recover like an athlete and then also eat like an athlete. And I think one huge misconception when it comes to running, I think for women is that if they run more, they're burning more calories. So it's going to be really easy to be super lean, right? That's like the goal. That's like the ticket for fat loss, where if you are trying to have performance goals as a runner, fat loss should be the last thing on your mind because you're going to need a lot of fuel and to support running at a high intensity and a high training volume. And so it's going to make it really challenging to prioritize fat loss. So just kind of like Autumn said, if you want to prioritize running really well and doing well in races and have performance be the goal, you need to be well rounded and strength training comes into play. And then you also need to be well fueled in terms of nutrition. And if you do want to lose body fat and work on body composition goals, that would be done in your off season.
Yeah.
Which is what Autumn has talked about with clients, right? Like in your training season is not the time to lose 10 pounds of body fat. Your runs are going to really be sacrificed, and that's where injuries are going to be likely to happen. And also where it's just going to be way more challenging because you're requiring a lot more of your body. So to add the stress of a calorie deficit on top of that is just not smart.
No, it'll actually really backfire on you. So you really have to be willing to titrate your calories to follow your training up, to follow your training volume. Plus I think too, sometimes some clients will lead in that direction and then we'll have a conversation. Well, what if we go into a deficit? Because I really want to lose a couple of pounds. So then it's kind of like, you kind of have to reassess your goals. Well, right now, your goal is, I just had a client do the coast to coast on New Zealand, right? Your goal is to get coast to coast in New Zealand. And then when you come home, that's the season. So then you kind of have to think, well, do you want to just maybe do a 5K and then we can work more on weightlifting and body composition? Like you kind of have to take a step back and reassess like where your goals are, because sometimes it sounds really fun, but then when you have to think about what you really have to do and put into motion, it's like, yeah, maybe, which is fine, which that's great. You know, maybe I don't want to run the full marathon. Maybe I want to run half, and let's keep that fourth strength training day in, and let's prioritize sprints and get me stronger, you know, and with my running in general. So there's a lot that goes to it. And again, I guess it depends on your goals and what goal you have through the season. But
Is
strength
most
training,
important.
yeah, strength training is definitely key in all of the goals that we're working on. And it's really important to keep that component as part of your training session for sure, especially the older you get, because you will lose muscle mass like crazy if you're not staying on top of that maintenance phase while you're putting your miles in. And then coming out, it takes that much more time to get that muscle mass back on, and it's that much harder to put that muscle mass back on. And you have to definitely make sure you're eating enough to support that goal as well. So
Autumn, I kind of had a related question, which can be
yeah.
an entire phone call, I'm sure. But maybe quickly, do you have, related to the nutrition piece, like a quick kind of carb protocol pre-race? I get that question relatively often. So like, what do you do? And if it's too long to answer, save it for the next call.
No, we can keep it short. So always practice this, right? So never wake up
Yeah.
and dive into something new, nothing new on race day.
New shoes, new carb approach.
Yeah, don't do that. So I like a rule of thumb, depending on the race, at least 90 minutes before, at least 50 grams of carbs. Okay. So anywhere from 50 grams of carbs to 70, you want to keep your carbohydrates simple, right? So bananas are great. I love the instant oatmeal. So anytime I do a long run, I just get the instant oatmeal, make it that way, slice some banana on top. But it's kind of trial and error depending on the distance. Anything under 90 minutes, I would just say get a good carbohydrate in, right? If it's a little bit longer than that, you're going to need a little bit more fuel to sustain your effort. But I would say a good rule of thumb is about 50 grams, at least 90 minutes before, depending on race distance, and keep it simple. Like, don't overthink it. Just, you know, something that you've practiced. Then 90 minutes post run, make sure you're getting a full meal in with the same 50 to 70 grams of carbohydrates, and really feel that recovery as well. That's a good question. That's a really good question. There is a lot to that. And again, it just depends on the race distance, but that's a great question.
Thank you.
Thanks, Griffin, for asking that.
Yeah.
Great. Well,
Anybody else have any questions?
yeah.
Okay.
If you do, ask them in the groups and we'll have Autumn answer them.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Autumn. I hope everyone
Thank you.
And also this time of year is like, if you're interested in getting more into running too, and you have questions on running specifically and like how to add that into your maybe training program where you're already doing HF Physique but want to add in some cardio and some runs, then ask away in the groups as well. Okay, thanks for joining everyone. Have a great week.